Bro, what the fuck? Why did I never do that?
Data and that's terrible.
You know something? I was thinking, having thoughts, as many do. And it occurred to me that it's been a long time since I've given, like, a video game review. I'm still reviewing movies out the wazoo. I'm seeing trash that I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy, like The Strangers Chapter 3. But when it comes to new video game reviews, I've abandoned it. It's like I went to the store to get cigarettes and never came home. And that's mainly because with the gaming channel now, my thoughts on games kind of live there, but I haven't done like a full review on a game in a while. And I wanted to change that. A new game just came out and I recently finished it after about 28 hours. That is 28 hours well spent. That is like 28 hours of euphoria right there. I'm talking 28 hours of soft, warm ball fondling is how this game made me feel. Nioh 3. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Nioh franchise. I've sung its praises for years. I have always glazed it, and even recently on the gaming channel, I uploaded a full Nioh 1 and 2 playthrough, a cumulative 30 hours worth of content I dropped, played all off stream, just to get excited again and get ready for Nioh 3, and I am happy to say Nioh 3 did not disappoint. I also just uploaded a 24-hour long video for my Nioh 3 playthrough. And I plan on doing more playthroughs because the game is just that good. Now, first things first, Nioh 3 is a Souls-like, and I know for a lot of people...
Last year, 16 families spent a week at the other end of the wealth divide.
We live in the oldest inhabited castle in the land.
Neighborhood is...
8 were from the top 10% with weekly budgets of up to £3,000.
I once said this time next year I'll be a millionaire, and it came true.
The other 8 were from the bottom 10% with as little as 110.
Every time I put my hand in my pocket, I just feel my leg.
They swapped homes.
Block, block, oh my God, we're rich.
The key fits.
Budgets.
Oh my God.
I can't believe it. Oh my God, that... Nah, yeah, why not?
Incredible.
And lives.
I can't live without smoked salmon.
Can't live without smoked salmon.
She ain't getting this car back.
Yeah.
But how did a week at the other end of Britain's wealth divide change their lives?
I was intrigued to meet you because you were this guy who was funnier than me on the TV, you see, so I thought I'd better, try and experience the real person, which I'm still annoyed about, by the way.
Don't worry, you'll have to accept it and move on.
The experience was so positive because I saw a different side of life.
I talk to Andy every day. We're very close. He's one of my best friends.
He's like a brother.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping for a fancy car today, James.
Well, it's not that unfancy, it's a Golf GTI, nothing wrong with that.
It's all right, but like maybe a Ferrari.
Well, if you don't like it, you can get the bus. Which would you prefer?
I'll stick with the car.
We catch up with 5 families from the first 2 series.
Whenever I see Matt or I speak to Matt and Monique, I'm always saying thank you, and they keep telling me off, don't they, for saying thank you. But I just can't thank them enough for what they've done.
So that makes it that little bit easier to then start the employment.
Thank
you.
Let's do it. Come on. That's it. He's learning. He's learning.
They all had different experiences, but one thing they had in common was that life would never be the same.
Had it not been for that life-changing experience for Rich House Prowse, he would, I don't think he would have survived.
Just not doing the work and listening and learning and taking it in. What scares us, only things that scaring us is actually childcare and paying bills.
Oh, I've got the front room back now. No, it is nice, sorry.
No, you miss, of course you miss.
I miss you, but not you on the sofa. No.
In the very first episode, the caddies from Bristol traded places with the Williams family from Weston-super-Mare.
I suspect life for families in the bottom 10% is very different to our life.
I bet they've got a doorbell. When I was a kid, you were classed as posh if you had a doorbell.
The day their episode was broadcast, James Caddy and Anthony Williams met for the first time.
Hello! Hiya. How you doing? Shake hands, hug?
Nice to finally meet you, mate.
Yeah. Well, you're taller than me, stood on there, anyway.
Oh, well, got there, kind of know you in.
Yeah.
No, you're definitely bigger than me.
Wow, that's good. That's good. It's nice to be back.
Have a seat.
I've spent many a happy night on this sofa. Can I have my usual position, or where do you normally sit?
Oh, you show us where you want to sit, and then I'll tell you where I...
Well, you know, when I was here, I kind of, you know, was like this, really.
That's totally my seat.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
How old are you?
I'm about 100.
Oh, yeah?
51.
Are you 51?
Why? How do you think I look?
I thought you were in your 40s.
Oh, like.
I'm not being nice.
No, please, carry on playing nice.
I'm 29, me.
What's young?
I'm ready to retire soon.
In the 14 months since they first met, James and Anthony have become firm friends.
Every time you want a McDonald's, come over.
Yeah, well, I know you're prepared to indulge me. It's one tedious vegan family won't allow me to go to McDonald's, so I use Anthony as an excuse.
You want to get a burger? I'll get a burger.
My McDonald's chum. Why do we get on?
I find them hilariously funny.
Oh, well, thanks.
What about me?
My wife's a huge fan of yours.
Thank you. I don't know how to take that.
They're part of each other's lives now.
How you doing, Shay? You all right?
Yeah.
Very good. How you, Layla, all right? How are you, AJ? Vegetating in front of that game.
But James and Anthony's experiences of the swap couldn't have been more different.
This is the most full my wallet's ever been. That feels really nice.
Yeah.
I ordered a salad, but they accidentally sent me cake. I was starving.
Yo.
So I just had to eat.
How's that mean?
Literally the best cake I've ever had.
Chat. Explain how that's me.
Subscriptions, chat him stuck.
Bro wanna be pets so bad.
Oh, come on, man. Wait, that's awful. That's awful. Hey, what is this, man? That's awful. Oh, is it a panther? Is that a panther?
What game is this song from?
Process plants, but they allowed us to quickly strip an animal of its meat and get it home safely. Compare this to the lion, which must slowly rip off chunks of meat and lick up the rest with its tongue. Other weapons such as clubs could break bones or even kill an enemy in a single blow. While a lone encounter with Dinopithecus would have been absolute nightmare fuel, humans were rarely ever alone. Acting together armed with stones, spears, and heavy clubs, we were an unstoppable force. Even Dinopithecus was no match for our abilities. But our tools and physical abilities wouldn't fully develop until around 1.7 million years ago. And even then, plenty of men, women, and children met their end to tooth and claw.
For most of human evolution, we were not the predators we are now with various gadgets and gizmos. We were prey. We were getting bodied left, right, and center. Dinofelis was a false saber-toothed cat, not as famous as the Smilodon with its massive fangs, but in some ways it was more terrifying. In fact, you're about to hear why. Dinofelis was an ambush predator that didn't just chase you down. It waited in the underbrush and shadows, and then it pounced. Bad kitty meow. Paranthropus skulls have been found with holes in them precisely spaced and matching the canine teeth of Dinofelis. Professor C.K. Brain, who studied sites like these for decades, proposed a theory. Dinofelis specialized in killing primates, hominids, and baboons. It would kill them and drag their bodies back to its cave lair. For millions of years, something waited in the darkness specifically to hunt things that looked like us, that walked on 2 feet and scrolled Instagram reels, I'm guessing. And get this, Dinofelis was not alone. A 2025 study analyzed bite marks on bones from the Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. The bones belonging to Homo habilis, one of our direct ancestors, had marks that weren't made by hyenas, as scientists had originally assumed. They were made by leopards. Leopards hunt live prey, hyenas scavenge. So Homo habilis wasn't scavenging and getting caught. Homo habilis was being hunted. Homo habilis, by the way, whose name literally means handyman, was basically the original do-it-yourselfer. A small, kindergarten-sized, scrappy bastard, famous for inventing stone tools, but not, unfortunately, for inventing not getting eaten. So 2 million years ago, our little bastard ancestors spent most of their time hiding, running, and trying not to become something else's meal, something like Dinofelis. Back at Olduvai Gorge, there was something even worse in the water. Crocodylus anthropophagus. If you understand the name, it tells you basically everything that you need to know. Anthropophagus means human eater. And as a human, that's a pretty scary name. This was a 25-foot crocodile with bony horns on its head. It lived almost 2 million years ago in the same waters where Homo habilis tried to survive. And we know it ate humans because we found the bite marks on hominin bones matching its teeth exactly, given its name. Our Homo habilis ancestors as adults stood about 3 feet tall and weighed around 85 to 90 pounds. So like I said earlier, it's essentially a bunch of tiny kindergartners. Easy prey for a 25-foot crocodile. I guess that's bigger than a kindergartner. How much does a kindergartner weigh? 50 pounds? I was very square when I was in kindergarten, so I'm not an accurate measurement. I think it was like 125. I was also like 9, so. Just kidding, I was homeschooled. This next beast that ancient humanity faced is really scary to me. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I don't like birds very much. They freak me out. I often have bad dreams about birds. I don't know why. Giant ones like this, the Leptilus robustus. On the island of Flores in Indonesia, researchers found fossils so strange that some scientists initially thought these were diseased modern humans. Skull the size of a chimpanzee's, a body standing at a disgusting 3 foot 7 inches tall. But the thing was, the bones were too old, they were too consistent and too numerous to be anomalies. These were Homo floresiensis, aka the hobbits. They stood about 3 foot 7 inches tall. These little son of a bitches made stone tools, they hunted dwarf elephants, and they controlled fire, all with a brain roughly the size of a grapefruit. They survived until at least 50,000 years ago, possibly even later. And their island was a nightmare. Komodo dragons, the largest lizard on Earth, and they also shared their island with Leptilus robustus, a carnivorous stork that stood 6 feet tall. There are few things scarier to me than birds, and with this thing existing alongside my little tiny grandpappies, it is an interesting and terrifying thought. It was so big, it was twice as tall as Homo habilis, twice as tall as Homo floresiensis, and taller than Paranthropus. I like looking at the hobbits, the little guys, the drawings of them. They're so adorable, dude. They look nothing like how Tolkien imagined them. He was way off. Science people debate whether or not the stork actively hunted hobbits. At a minimum, they competed fiercely for carcasses, and you can probably imagine fighting a 6 foot meat-eating bird for scraps of an elephant while Komodo dragons circled. Maybe you can imagine that. Maybe you can't. I often dream of that. Okay, guys. Either way, Flores was not a very safe or fun sounding place. Yeah, seems like a shithole. Over time, some things changed. Homo erectus emerged with larger bodies, larger brains, larger penises. Evidence suggests they may have controlled fire, they could run long distances, and they made better tools than the other humanoids around that time. That's probably not the right word to use. That's some science fiction shit. I apologize. I'm an idiot, not an anthropologist. The tables turned for humanity slowly at first, but within a few 100,000 years, very short period of time, all things considered, things that once hunted us started to disappear. Dinofelis went extinct, and so did that giant, scary crocodile, and we spread across the world. But the imprint of these monsters and the fear that they caused stayed with us. Cannot erase thousands of years of evolutionary survival instinct. Fast forward even further. Homo sapiens emerges in Africa around 300,000 years ago. Modern humans, that is us. Even then, we were not alone. Other human species still walk the earth in Europe, Asia, and isolated corners of Africa. Species we would meet, species we would fight, species we would... Some we conquered through violence, some we conquered through... I mean, that's what happened. And some of these we can't find. No bones, no fossils, only their DNA remains hiding in our own cells. Ghost species. In 2020, researchers at UCLA published a study that changed basically a couple things about what we thought we knew about our human ancestry. I was gonna say changed everything, but that's just not true. It's definitely odd though. They analyzed the DNA of West African populations, Yoruba people from Nigeria and Mende people from Sierra Leone, and they found something that shouldn't really have been there. Somewhere between 2 and 19% of their DNA came from an unknown species, a ghost population that diverged from our ancestors over 1 million years ago. And the interbreeding happened around 50,000 years ago, roughly the same time Neanderthals were breeding with humans in Europe, aka my grandpappies was out there, them big hairy son bitches. I have so much Neanderthal DNA, I'm gonna show you guys real quick. Yes, I gave my DNA to 23andMe in like 2015 or whatever. I regretted it, of course, and I know you can tell them to stop, but I kind of like it. I don't care if they clone me or whatever they're gonna do. I know, it's evil, dude. It sucks. Don't do this. But look, I'm an Italian person. I'm 31% Italian. I'm glad it's focusing on it. 18% Western European. And only 7% Levantine. I was more than that. My shit keeps updating and I become less and less cool. Another new one is Welsh. Apparently I'm Welsh. That's where all the Neanderthal comes from. So I'm not sure what species all those are. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, all right? Trying to make, you know, small talk. If you made it this far in the video, obviously you like what you're watching, so hit the like button, I guess, and if you want to see more videos like this, I would love to make more stuff like this. This type of stuff is really cool, and I love this, and I appreciate you guys for enjoying it, okay? Because it's really cool. The thing about the Neanderthals interbreeding with humans in Europe is we have Neanderthal fossils. We have hundreds of them. We have tools, art, burial sites, incredible art, by the way, unbelievably beautiful, just magical stuff that's a rabbit hole in and of itself. Neanderthal art is incredible. For this ghost species, we have nothing. No fossils, no bones, no tools, nothing but genetic traces that were left behind. Could it have been late surviving Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis? Something we never found? We don't know. Fossil preservation in West Africa is poor because the climate destroys bones and the soil is quite acidic. What we do know is that some of their genes spread rapidly through our ancestors. Genes for tumor suppression, genes for hormone regulation, whatever the species was, they did give us some useful things. So there was a species successful enough to survive for 1 million years, hiding in West Africa with no physical trace left behind, only their blood in our veins. Outside of me just saying the climate in West Africa doesn't exactly lead to the great preservation of fossils and bones, how about a real guy telling you more about that?
There are almost certainly dozens of other branches of the human family tree that we haven't found any physical evidence of. The ghost hominid present in West Africa was only discovered in the year 2020. Keep in mind, the genetics of this hominid are specific to West Africa. Other Africans don't have any trace of it. Geneticists will continue to find strange remnants of extinct lineages around the world. It is possible that we even have traces from the tiny hobbit of Flores, or even late surviving populations of Homo erectus spread across the world. It really gives you a glimpse into just how many human species there were. When our species emerged 300,000, it really gives you a glimpse into just how many human species there were. When our species emerged 300,000 years ago, there were at least 7 other species of human, and almost certainly many more that we don't have evidence for. The ghost hominids of West Africa prove that entire species can remain isolated in a relatively small area for hundreds of thousands of years. In the next couple of years, be on the lookout because new species of human will almost certainly be discovered. And that brings us to one of the most important archaeological sites ever discovered.
Thank you, North, if that is your real name. Los Huesos, Spanish for the Pit of Bones, or just Pit of Bones. It's a cave in the Atapuerca Mountains of northern Spain. 430,000 years ago, someone or something dumped bodies into a 50-foot shaft. At least 28 individuals, Proto-Neanderthals or possibly Homo heidelbergensis. Science people still debate the proper classification. One of those skulls is labeled Cranium 17. It has 2 holes above the left eye socket perfectly positioned, made by the same weapon from different angles, 2 separate blows to the face. And there was no healing. The victim died from those wounds. This is the oldest known and recorded murder. The blows were not accidental. Accidents happened to the side of the head. This was a deliberate face-to-face attack. And the fact that there were 2 blows suggests a clear intention to kill, according to science people. And what makes this even stranger is that the body wasn't left where it fell. Someone carried it to the pit and placed it with the other body. And also in the area, a redstone tool was found, possibly a grave offering or something along those lines. So 430,000 years ago, these proto-humans killed each other and then they buried their dead in a shaft. Murder, mourning, violence, ritual, all the same species, all in the same place. We had a war with these motherfuckers. A war with the Neanderthals. 600,000 years ago, humanity split in 2. One branch stayed in Africa. They would become us, the Homo sapiens. The other branch walked north into Europe and Asia. They would become the Neanderthals, or as I knew them as a kid, Neanderthal. For hundreds of thousands of years, the 2 lineages evolved separately in different climates, facing different challenges and developing different bodies. Then we met again. And the first contact happened earlier than we thought for quite a while. In 2025, researchers published a study of a 140,000-year-old child skull from the School Cave in Israel. The skull looked like Homo sapiens, but the inner ear structure was Neanderthal. So were parts of the jaw and teeth. That's a hybrid. 140,000 years ago, 100,000 years earlier than the previous estimates of our intermingling. The science people concluded that when humans and Neanderthals met, they didn't only fight, they coexisted for a while. They shared knowledge, tools, hunting methods, and they even had children together. They also, obviously, they beat the hunting. They didn't only estimates of our intermingling. The science people concluded that when humans and Neanderthals met, they didn't only fight, they coexisted for a while. They shared knowledge, tools, hunting methods, and they even had children together. They also, obviously, they beat the out of each other. There was warfare. We fought them a lot. The Saint-Césaire Neanderthal skull found in France was split by a blow. Someone hit this individual hard enough to crack their skull 36,000 years ago, which really is not that long ago. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, a Neanderthal was found with a spear wound to the chest. The weapon that killed him was human. Perifractures, broken forearms from warding off blows appear frequently in both Neanderthal and early human remains. This war we had with Neanderthals was not quick. Humans broke out of Africa around 200,000 years ago, and it took 150,000 years to fully conquer Neanderthal territory. They pushed back, they retook ground over time. It was a war of attrition, not a blitzkrieg. The really strange part about all this is that they were so much like us. It's freaky. They're not humans, but they're also like us. We still have their DNA inside of us. I've got a lot of it, according to 23andMe and my corporate overlords. In 2018, researchers dated cave art in Spain to 64,000 years ago, at least 20,000 years before generative AI and before modern humans arrived in Europe. The first one was a lie. Red hand stencils, geometric shapes, painted stalagmites. By the way, stalagmites are the ones that come from the ground and they go up, and stalactites are the ones that come down. You know how I remember that? Because mites are crawling around on the ground. Stalagmite. So yeah, pretty much, pretty cool. Neanderthals made art and shell jewelry and necklaces from evil talons. They decorated themselves with feathers. Shanidar 1 was a Neanderthal found in Iraq. He had a crushed skull that had healed, a withered arm, possibly was amputated, and all this found with evidence of partial blindness and deafness. These were multiple injuries that would have left him unable to survive alone, and he lived to an old age, so someone cared for this old bastard for years. 2% of non-African human DNA is Neanderthal. They didn't die outright, they were absorbed. They were bred out of existence, their genes diluted over generations until genetically they ceased to exist as a separate population, which as an idea is incredibly epic. I think that's a really cool way to think about time, because when you think about all these different species and genus and all these different creatures that have lived for the past millions upon millions upon millions of years, it's just like, where'd they all go? They just got killed by something? No, they just kind of stopped existing a little bit. We don't really know exactly. You know, we don't always find their bones because sometimes conditions don't lead to bones being preserved in fossils. Thank you, North02, for explaining that to us. And that's what happened to the Neanderthals. They were our enemies and they were our lovers, and now they're gone. Requies a tu pace, Sir Neanderthal. I mentioned that little Israeli hybrid child. How about this hybrid child that was found in 2012 inside Denisova Cave in Siberia? Researchers found a single fragment of bone, so small it was almost discarded. Another unidentifiable piece of ancient debris. But luckily, with DNA analysis, that has changed everything, because DNA is everywhere. As long as it was living at some point and there's some DNA on it, we have more info now. Turns out that the bone belonged to a 13-year-old girl who lived around 90,000 years ago, and her mother was a Neanderthal and her father was a Denisovan. She was a first-gen hybrid. And not like a Prius, all right? Her parents were from two completely different human species. Her father, when they analyzed his genome more closely, they found Neanderthal ancestry hundreds of generations back. But he was a long-term Neanderthal. Scientists named this little girl Denny. Finding a first-generation hybrid is statistically quite improbable unless interbreeding was common or unless when these species met, they mated regularly. A fellow by the name of Svante Pabo put it fairly simple. The Neanderthals and Denisovans may not have had many opportunities to meet, but when they did, they must have mated frequently, much more so than we previously thought. They were horny as f, dude. I'm telling you, that's what's up with the Neanderthals, man. Us Euros love mating. We love to mate. For a while, the Denisovans were the ultimate ghost species. There was one finger bone, a few teeth, a fragment of a skull, all from a single cave in Siberia. That's all we had. But their DNA was everywhere. 5% of Melanesian and Aboriginal Australian DNA comes from Denisovans, and there are significant traces that appear in Southeast Asian populations. And something even stranger is that there were multiple Denisovan populations. Some were as genetically different from each other as they were from Neanderthals. There are several different species of Denisovan all interbreeding with humans at different times and places. In Papua New Guinea, the evidence suggests interbreeding happened as recently as 15 to 30,000 years ago, long after we thought all archaic humans had died out. But they survived in remote mountains and on isolated islands longer than anyone expected. Now fast forward, 1933, Harbin, China. A Chinese laborer is forced to help Japanese soldiers build a bridge, and while digging, he finds something, a massive human skull. He hides the skull in a well, keeping it secret from his occupiers for decades. In 2018, the man's family finally donates the skull to science. The skull is enormous, with a brain capacity of 1,420 cubic centimeters, larger than most modern humans, with massive brow ridges, a wide face, and a huge nose probably adapted to cold climates, with no chin. Guys like Andrew Tate, all right? Science people initially called this finding the Dragon Man. They proposed a new species named Homo longi. But in 2025, DNA analysis confirmed what many other smart people had suspected. The genetic material extracted from the dental plaque of this skull matched the known Denisovan genomes. So after over a decade of searching, we finally know what the Denisovans looked like. They looked almost human. They were massive and strange. Our relatives, our ancestors, our lovers. Gone now, except for what they left behind, like their big old heads. In 2013, recreational cavers exploring Rising Star Cave in South Africa found a narrow shaft, only 8 inches wide, which really isn't that big if you think about it. The bottom, 30 meters underground, they found bones. Lots and lots of bones, 1,550 fragments, at least 15 individuals, 15, 15, 1, 5, 1, 5, the largest collection of a single hominin species ever found in Africa. They called the species Homo naledi. I'm probably not saying that right, but that's one that I didn't hear anybody actually say. So the other ones I looked. Anyways, here's what didn't make sense. The anatomy of these findings looked primitive. Brain size between 465 and 610 cubic centimeters, with modern humans averaging between 1,270 and 1,330. The shoulders of these creatures were sloped forward like an ape's. The fingers were curved or adapted for climbing. This looked like a species from 2 million years ago, and scientists expected the dating to confirm this. But the dating came back, confirming 236 to 335,000 years ago. Now, it's very important to note that a lot of dating methods, not this one in particular, are very inaccurate, and there's, anytime you read any one of these sources or find anything, it's like, well, we don't have any idea. So, you know, it really doesn't matter anyways. People will continue to find and you know, update people. So maybe I'll make an update video when they change all this information. Who knows? The point is, that's pretty recent. It's wrong. It's not possible. A species this primitive should have been extinct for 1 million years, but instead they survived alongside early Homo sapiens. Did they meet? We have no idea, but there is an undeniable overlap according to this information. And what's incredibly bizarre is that the bodies were not dumped accidentally. They were stuffed into this cave. The cave is too difficult to access. There's no predator, no flood deposit. There's no evidence of anything but the bodies being placed there by somebody. Now, maybe we killed them in mass and buried them in a tiny hole, or maybe the Homo naledi buried their own dead. There were also cave engravings found nearby, geometric shapes carved into rock, and all of this with a brain the size of a gorilla's. That's ritual behavior in a hominid species. It's kind of weird. What exactly were they?
Homo naledi is a perfect example of what we discussed earlier. The survival of many strange lineages way longer than paleoanthropologists ever expected. An entire species known only from a single cave. If this cave had never been found or was destroyed by geological forces, we would have absolutely no evidence that this species ever lived. There were undoubtedly hundreds of thousands or even millions of Homo naledi that lived long and nuanced lives. But 300,000 years later, all we know about them comes from one cave. It's a humbling reminder that the sands of time consume all. Our existence is a tiny fleeting moment compared to the billions of other humans that have lived. It makes you think about how many other strange human species once roamed our planet. And were some of them as creative or compassionate as our own? We will never have precise answers to these questions. But one thing we know for sure is that they lived incredible lives. And one of the strangest species also happened to live in a land ruled by monsters.
In 2007, inside Callao Cave in the northern Philippines, the first bone was found by accident while sorting through animal remains. It looked human, but not quite. And over the years, searching in this area, researchers discovered 13 fossils: teeth, finger bones, and toe bone. And the fingers and toes are curved like Australopithecines, species that should have been extinct for 2 million years. But the dating puts these fossils at 50 to 67,000 years ago. A 2023 study pushed the estimate even further back to 134,000 years. Science people named these creatures Homo luzonensis. Locally, they're called Ubog, after a mythical caveman, which is great. So yet another example of fossils showing a mix of primitive and modern features that theoretically, based on our understanding of all this stuff, shouldn't have existed together. How many more of these things are out there just waiting to spin what we understand on its head? Dude, I hope a lot, because I love this shit. Now, what about Homo erectus? Homo erectus was the most successful human species ever. They existed for nearly 2 million years. They spread across Africa, across Asia. They may have been the first to control fire. They certainly were the first to hunt big game systematically. And every human alive today descended from populations that split off from Homo erectus or its close relatives. For a long time, scientists thought Homo erectus went extinct around 500. thousand years ago on the mainland, but a 96 study suggested some may have survived on Java until 53 to 27,000 years ago, possibly overlapping with Homo sapiens. But unfortunately, a 2019 study corrected this data. The Java fossils from a site called Nyangdong date to 117 to 108,000 years ago. Still ancient, not as recent, date to 117 to 108,000 years ago. Still ancient, not as recent as we thought. So